All right, in this video we're going to look at the digestive system primarily. Just for your reference, up here is the thorax, this would be the heart, and here we've got the diaphragm. So we're going to look at the organs that are inferior to the diaphragm down in the abdominal cavity. All right, I'm going to take you through the GI tract, which is called the gastrointestinal tract. This tract, of course, would start up in the upper body with the mouth and the pharynx and the esophagus. But we're going to look at it here in the abdominal region. So from the esophagus, the first place that food would go, and at this point the food will be called chyme, will be here in the stomach. So I'm holding up the stomach here. And you need to know the regions or areas of the stomach. This uppermost region here is called the fundus or fundic region. This area here is close to where the esophagus dumps into the stomach, and this is called the cardiac region. And that makes sense because we are, of course, just inferior to the heart here. So this is the cardiac region of the stomach. And essentially that's right near where the esophagus empties into the stomach. The bulk of the stomach, this area here, is called the body. And finally, this last part of the stomach here is called the pyloric region, or pylorus. And this name pylor means gatekeeper because this is the part of the stomach that's responsible for allowing only a little bit of chyme at a time to be released into the small intestine. Now we're going to look at the small intestine. So from the pylorus, the stomach leads into the first part of the small intestine. And it's just this little curved area right here. It's a tube. This first part of the small intestine is called the duodenum or duodenum. Continuing on through the small intestine, it's a long coiled tube. The next region of the small intestine would be most of this upper region of the small intestine. All of these coiled tubes is called the jejunum. And finally, the last portion of the small intestine, so this lower region of the small intestine, is called the ileum. The way I remember that sequence of duodenum, jejunum, ileum is I think of like a music DJ whose name is Ilium. So D for duodenum, J for jejunum, and I ileum, DJ ileum. Kind of silly, but it might work for you. All right, so let's continue with the ileum. Let me find the end of the ileum. So here we have the last part of the ileum. And now we're seeing where the ileum meets the large intestine or colon. From the ileum, we get to the colon. You'll notice that the large intestine is significantly larger in diameter. This part of the large intestine that dips down a bit, this pouch, is called the cecum. You'll notice this little worm-like thing sticking off the cecum. This little structure is called the appendix. You can see how small and narrow it is, and it's possible for it to get clogged up with feces, and at that point you can get an infection called appendicitis, and the appendix can get very large and it can even rupture. At that point, sometimes individuals will have the appendix removed. All right, so here's the cecum again, and now we're going to focus on the other parts of the large intestine. The large intestine goes up here, and by up I mean I'm following the direction of the feces, and the movement upwards is where the name ascending colon comes from. You can also call it ascending colon. So here's the ascending colon, and then the feces will travel across the abdomen in what is known as the transverse colon, because transverse means across. And then the fecal matter will go down. I'm going to move the small intestine a bit so you can see this. Then the fecal matter will go down the descending colon. Finally, we've got another bend or curve, and at this point we're in kind of an S-shaped part of the colon called the sigmoid colon. Sigmoid means S-shaped. And finally, we're almost at the end of the journey for the GI tract. Down here, I'm going to lift up the urinary bladder here. Down here, you'll notice that the tube runs straight down the midline of the body, and this is called the rectum. And that's the last place that the fecal matter would be, and at that point, you would be doing defecation or releasing that fecal matter from the body. And rect means straight up and down, so the name implies its orientation in the body. All right, so that was the GI tract or gastrointestinal tract. But there are some accessory structures of the digestive system that, although food does not travel through these structures, they're very important to the digestion of your food. I want to point out this very large organ here on the right side of the abdomen. This is called the liver. And the liver technically has 4 lobes or parts to it. The 2 most visible here are the left lobe and the right lobe. The liver is important for many reasons, but with respect to digestion, the liver produces something called bile, which helps you to emulsify fats as you do the digestive process on your fats in your diet. Storage of the bile takes place here in this sac-like structure here, which is called the gallbladder. Now, normally the gallbladder would look kind of greenish because the bile within it is fairly green, but this cadaver is fairly old, so the gallbladder doesn't have the green color it would normally have. Another important accessory organ is a rather nondescript looking organ. I'm going to take, this is the stomach again. I'm going to lift up the stomach, and this rather unattractive lumpy organ is a really important organ called your pancreas. And the pancreas, just like the liver and gallbladder, are located right next to the duodenum or duodenum. And that proximity is important. I mentioned that the liver produces bile to help with digestion. Well, that bile can be squirted right onto your food here in the duodenum or duodenum. And note the pancreas is also right close to the duodenum. And the pancreas produces a whole myriad of digestive enzymes for digesting carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, even nucleic acids like DNA. So the pancreas is fundamental to chemical digestion in your body. Pancreas, you might recall from the endocrine system, is also an important endocrine organ. It produces insulin and glucagon to regulate your blood sugar. So the pancreas is important for a couple of body systems. Finally, I want to mention, although it's not a digestive organ, I want to point out this organ tucked in down here. I'll lift it out just a bit for you. This organ is not a digestive organ. It's called the spleen. And it helps you to clean red blood cells out of your blood, amongst other functions. But I just wanted to point it out in case you were wondering what it is, and I didn't want you to confuse it with a kidney. The kidneys are not visible here. They would be posterior to a lot of these abdominal organs. So this organ here, all the way on the left side of your body, is the spleen.